There was a day. This was actually one of the stranger days. It truly was. In the history of the sport, it really was a very strange day, but there was a press conference, and at the press conference, Jose Aldo became the world champion of the UFC, and Ronda Rousey became the world champion of the UFC. Neither had ever stepped foot in the octagon. This isn't a riddle, by the way. This isn't like you have to rewind and go, did he just say what I think he said, in case you're a new fan? There was a press conference where Jose Aldo and Ronda Rousey became world champions. Now, history settled that just fine. Everybody came out of that looking fine. Imagine they had lost. Imagine Jose and Ronda had lost. Imagine they lost and then they retired, or they lost and lost again and got cut. Just imagine that. You would have world champions that never won a fight in the UFC. You had world champions that had never even been in the UFC. Now they were able to go and correct that, but stay with me. I'm not picking on history of our sport. I'm reminding you of history of the sport because I want to ask you a question. We're going to do the same thing. It's hypothetical, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to a press conference and we're going to make somebody the champion. But it's the BMF champion. Who do you give the belt to? I believe the BMF championship to be arguably the most coveted championship. Now, I spent a life with dreams and visions of Olympic Games. And there's a tournament every single year that's the exact same tournament and process as the Olympic Games. You might not know that. It's called the World Championships. Every sport has it. Every year they hold the World Championships. Every fourth year, it's the Olympic Championships. It's the same tournament for every sport, not just mine of wrestling. But I share that story with you because the Olympics are so coveted. It's just so rare. And possibly it's that background. Possibly that's why I think the BMF is so cool, because it's so incredibly rare. What have we had, guys? Three BMF championship fights ever? If I'm wrong, I'm awfully close, and I know we had some BMF champions fight. That's not the same thing as a BMF championship fight. Anyway, when I look at it from that perspective, I really do hold that belt to a very high degree, not to mention the qualifications to get into the bracket, right? If you want to use an amateur term. We know a BMF when we see it, though maybe we can't define it. Like Cub Swanson, for example, is a BMF. George St. Pierre might not be. Right? It's a different edge. It's a different feel. At any rate, if we go to a press conference and the BMF is vacated and we're going to award it the same as we did at one point for featherweight and the same as we did for the Bantamweight Women's Championship, who do you give it to? I know my answer. Dan Hooker. If there's ever been a BMF where the work is already done, Hooker goes on Helwani's show. And he's got the split screen. He's on with Sarukian. And they're going back and forth. There's no bully in Dan Hooker. There's a straight up badass. What's the difference? A badass will bully everybody. A badass will treat them all the same. It doesn't matter if it's your first day or you're the captain of the team. The badass, whatever that energy is, will spread that evenly. And his willingness to participate and engage will not be indicative of who you are. Do you see the difference? So, Dan Hooker, who is in so incredibly deep right now. He's in so incredibly deep because of his own success. He comes through Gamrot. Gamrot's this incredible wrestler. Gamrot on paper, by the way, is more decorated than Sarukian on paper for wrestling. You guys might find that interesting. Islam, by example, is not decorated at all in wrestling, but we can see what a great wrestler he is. And we see that same thing from Sarukian. Like, Sarukian is just one of these greats. But on paper, Gamrot was 5th in the European Championships. Many of you don't know that. Tremendously difficult to do. And Dan Hooker beat him. And it was a surprise. And I think even Dan Hooker was surprised. I think Dan Hooker was at least surprised in the way that he beat him. But his effortness and his willingness to try had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with he thought he was walking in and he was up against it or not. That's what a badass does. So Dan Hooker is in so deep right now. I mean, he is now a victory away from fighting for the world title. Officially. To get that victory, he's got to go through Sarukian, who is clearly the number one guy. Sarukian beat the former champion in Oliveira. Sarukian had the bout agreement, which made him number one contender. Sarukian went into a backup position, which makes him the next closest thing to the number one contender. Sarukian is ranked number one. I mean, there's no way around this. This is the guy. And Hooker's got to deal with him. And Hooker did not care at all. There was no flex. There was no promotion. There was just Hooker being Hooker. And it was awesome. It just was. And if you're in Sarukian's shoes, by the way, it's not like you don't know. You can generally get a guy to back down, to wilt, to concede certain positions. You can generally, before the fight start, make it very clear. If you get here with me, you have a problem. And the guy will be aware. Hooker's just not that guy. He just doesn't. So, if I was in charge and I had to give out a BMF belt, I'd give it to Dan Hooker. Who would you give it to?